This is a very interesting situation. This is a CELPIP writing task 2 question. So this is an essay question. You have an answer here by a student, and he's writing very similarly to other candidates. We're going to explore this and look at this answer, and we'll just work on 5 things. 5 things only that'll improve the scores here drastically, because the 5 things I'm going to point out here are considered major mistakes. So the good news is you fix those and you will have major improvement in marks. Like this student of ours here, he messaged saying that the exam was November 30th. Look at the scores here. Listening 12, reading 12, reading 12 is awesome. Writing 11, speaking 11, and the student used all our materials that are included in our CELPIP 15-hour course. You can check that course out in the description. Just like this student, we guarantee your results. And now these 5 tips will help you in an amazing fashion. You're about to be blown away. Check this out. The question says, your local government is trying to figure out if they, during winters, should open all local shops late in the evening times or close them at 6. Simple. You have 2 options. Open them until 6 or open them until late evening times, which could be 10 or 11. Okay? This is the answer. Now, what you can do is pause the video, read the answer, think about it. What are the improvements this student could make? Because right now, this student is not scoring more than 6. But by the end of this video, we'll implement these 5 things and ensure that this student scores over 10. Let's see how. Grammar mistakes are very few, so we're not going to bother with those. But the first thing that I'm looking at here is the first impression. It is a bad first impression. And remember, the markers are humans. Human examiners are marking you. So first impressions, last impressions are important. We'll talk about the last impression later on when we talk about the structure, which is our 5th tip. So here the student has just copied the question. I would choose option B, open our local stores late in the winter times. This is very basic and I would never do something like this. I'm going to erase this. And the rule you should understand is there should be 2 sentences at the start, the general sentence and the opinion sentence. So it's going to be something like this. We start with a general sentence like this. The options given above can be highly contentious, which means debatable or argumentative, among the local population. This is where you have not given an opinion yet. Now, in the next sentence, you're supposed to give an opinion, and you're supposed to give a firm opinion, not using the same words from the question, but using your own words. So it's going to go something like this. I opine that keeping stores open late at night can have many more pros than cons. So we're not saying option B and then simply copy paste it. We're rephrasing it in our own words and saying, hey, I picked this because I think it has more benefits. So that is your first impression. Make sure it's always general sentence, and the second sentence is opinion. The next thing I'm going to look at is the flow, and this is the next major thing. Let's see how the flow of thoughts is going. Here we start the next paragraph with opening late aligns with. That's okay. I mean, you can say firstly on the one hand, but it's not highly mandatory to do that in body 1. You're starting your argument, that's totally fine. So the person says opening late aligns better with customers' routines in winter. People tend to stay indoors during cold mornings and venture out later in the day. This is one point. If we open stores later, people will have more things to do outside. And now I'm thinking, this is so fast. Like, you were just talking about this thing and now you're giving another point. Why didn't you say something like furthermore or moreover or likewise or secondly or some connector that tells me you are switching to the next point? So that's missing. There's no hence or therefore or something here that would conclude it. Now you don't need it all the time, but it does help with flow at least once here, or it could be used here. It's not even used here. There's no concluding words or a sentence that looks like it's going to the conclusion. So flow is missing in terms of the ending of bodies. Likewise, the starting of this body is like the same word. First of all, it's repetitive. Secondly, there's no flow. I would use something like similarly. And why this is different than furthermore is because it has a ly in it. It is an adverb, more range of vocab. But I would try something else here. I would do something like what's more. And now what I'm doing is using 2 worded connectors to get my marks of variety, because I have now 2 words here as a connector versus 1 word here in furthermore. So it's more range. And now the flow is a little bit better. But when I'm looking at this paragraph, we'll see this paragraph later. This is supposed to be the conclusion, but it doesn't say to conclude or overall. It's on the other hand. So where's my conclusion? So the flow is really missing. You want to make sure you are using the right words when you're changing paragraphs. You don't need to do much here in body 1. You can ignore this as long as you start correctly with a general sentence, opinion, and then you're explaining it. Looks perfect. Add words like furthermore, likewise, moreover when you switch between two options or 2 points during a paragraph. Definitely going into body 2, use something like what's more, similarly, on top of that, nevertheless, based on what you're about to say next. And try to use a concluding sentence at the end of at least one of the 2 bodies. Okay, the third thing we're going to look at is the task response. And for that, I want you guys to look at this paragraph. So here he says, opening late aligns better with customers' routines in winter. Okay, people tend to stay indoors during cold mornings and venture out later in the day. This is point number 1. And then we go to point number 2. But here in point number 1, there is a major mistake in task response happening. This person is obviously trying to say that it's better for customers' routines because people tend to stay indoors in the mornings and they'll go out later in the day. But okay, how does that relate with this opinion? This is your opinion. I mean, obviously, it's obvious that the store should be open later in the day because people will venture out later in the day. But you have to mention it here. You have to say something like, so it says during cold mornings they venture out later in the day. We're going to put a semicolon here and say something like, hence, keeping stores open later in the day will allow for extra errands or activities. That's it. And we can do more activities that people need to do, but we have to keep the words under control. So here I am adding hence and then wrapping up the idea of the task response. If you keep stores open later in the day, it will allow for extra errands or activities that people need to do. So now it wraps up with the idea from the question that, okay, that's why we need to keep the stores open late. It's not just the reasoning, but how does it tie in to the question, to the task? Now let's analyze the next point. Furthermore, if we open the stores later, people will have things to do outside. This is a good start. I like that. There will be activities like shopping, socializing, drinking, and more. It's good. I wouldn't say drinking, you want to keep it formal, but it's good. It's better than the first point. You have mentioned here there will be more things to do outside later. That's the key word. So you have explained this nicely. But overall, if we go back to the flow again, it doesn't feel like it is ending the whole paragraph. So you could do something like consequently, thereby, but if you have done hence, I would avoid that. I would try to bring a more close here, like a phrase or a little sentence that will close this up nicely. So what I could use is there will be activities like shopping, socializing, drinking, and more, which will I want to say it's going to make sense that stores are going to open later on, which will play well to the idea of keeping stores open late. There you go. So this is both part of the flow. This is nice in terms of finishing up the paragraph with a good conclusion, but it's also wrapping up the idea better, tying in again with the task response that, look, that's why we need to do all of this. We need to open the stores later because we can do all these things. So make sure not to just state points, but tell the examiner how it relates to the opinion or the option you have chosen. Okay, let's look at the fourth big thing, and that is the use of advanced punctuation. So here is where you can use punctuation marks like exclamation marks, but not in task 2. You can use them in task 1 because in task 1 in the informal emails, if you use exclamation marks to show your excitement, anger, frustration, your feelings, you get more marks because you're supposed to do that in the informal emails. But in other situations like task 1 formal emails or task 2, which is completely formal, you cannot use exclamation marks because you have to be formal, no feelings involved. You can also use hyphens, but you have to be careful because people make a lot of mistakes with hyphens. So the one punctuation that will instantly put you into the advanced realm of students is the use of semicolons. Semicolons break the clause or the sentence into two clauses. Now here we have this one clause: people tend to stay indoors during cold mornings and venture out later in the day. This is the next clause, and this is the wrap-up of the initial idea. Hence, keeping stores open later in the day will allow for extra errands or activities. And you could do this once or twice. We could try another one here. Let's see. We'll check how we could use a semicolon here, but do it at least once. If you insert one semicolon, it instantly puts you into the higher range of candidates that examiners think have an academic level, because semicolons are used by people with a higher level of English. Now let's see if I could do that here in body 2. I'm not going to force it, but if I can, I'll use that opportunity. Opening later allows the staff to commute safely in daylight, reducing risks associated with icy roads and poor visibility. This is especially very important considering how many accidents occur during periods with snow, and that can be detrimental. Now instead of and, now you see there's also this a mistake. You need to put a comma here, but instead of a comma, you can just put a semicolon, remove the and now this is the conclusion. That can be very detrimental. And this is the conclusion of this clause. By removing and, we're first of all fixing the grammar mistake, which was caused by not using anything here. But now instead of a comma, we're using a semicolon, and making our weakness our strength. We're fixing that grammar mistake by putting something even more advanced. So try to use semicolons where you can. It shows the examiner that you're capable of using academic and advanced English. All right, guys. The fifth thing that you can do here to improve, and this writing seriously needs it, and that is the structure. So we fixed the structure initially with the intro. That needed to be fixed. Then we see here in body 1, you have 2 points. Now, if you have 2 points in body 1, you need to keep it consistent. You need to keep 2 points in body 2 as well. Has the student done that? No. In body 2, if you see, the student talks about opening later allows to commute safely because accidents occur with high snow, why risk it, and safety is very important. So it's just 1 point, and it's kind of repetitive. You can see it's like, why risk it, safety is important, these laws will ensure safety, and that was already clear because you were talking about how it's important because snow can cause accidents. So one problem is if you're just doing 1 point per body, you are going to be repetitive. And if you have done 2 points here, you got to do 2 here. If you would have done 1 point only in body 1, it's okay to do just 1 point here, but that has not been done. So that's a big structure problem. I would just keep 2 points and 2 points. And then the other structure problem is you don't have a conclusion in this paragraph. Instead, this is a major mistake. The student has talked about the other side here. I would completely eliminate this paragraph and put a conclusion, something like this. In conclusion, I stand firm by my stance that keeping stores open later in the day will allow for more activities and ensure public safety. You just rephrase the points you mentioned in the last bodies, making this a wise choice. And that's it. So now your structure is your intro with the opinion, your 2 bodies explaining more on your opinion, and your conclusion wrapping up the entire idea from the previous 3 paragraphs. And this is how you do 5 things, and you take these 5 steps to drastically improve your score. Guys, if you want more tips and tricks like these with detailed lectures, assignments, mock tests, be sure to check out our CELPIP 15-hour self-paced course in the description. When you click it, you'll go to the website where you'll see all the details. You'll be blown away with the reviews, with the details, and with what students are scoring. Check it out in the description.